Welcome back to another episode of the House of Bricks podcast, where, as you know, if you've been following our show, we feature some of the most elite athletes, Super Bowl champions, NBA champions, basketball players in the Hall of Fame, CEOs, top keynote speakers, doctors changing the landscape of healthcare. And today's guest is a very special person I met last year at the Impact 11 event. His name is Keith Davis. So Keith Davis, welcome to the House of Bricks.
I'm excited to be a guest on your podcast and excited to connect with you and hopefully have some words that will encourage all those that are listening.
Well, I appreciate that, except if you could just duck down a little bit lower so we can't see that USC logo on your shirt. I don't know who you paid off to get on this show, but we don't feature you guys from California. We're Big Ten real football fans that play defense.
And you mentioned in Big Ten, so I let all of Michigan, Ohio, everybody in that Midwest area to know we got some West Coast people that might be some new sheriffs in town sometime soon. USC, we've been struggling, but we're going to get it together sooner or later, so it'll be good.
I mean, it's a great program, historical legacy, and I know you were a big part of it. So I know a lot of people know who you are, but for those that don't, can you tell us a little bit about you, kind of your upbringing, journey to USC?
Sure. So just from a football perspective, played my high school football in California, a high school All-American, then recruited pretty much all the major universities in the nation. But there's a lot behind that I'll get into later. But ended up signing with USC. And at that time, USC was, and, you know, they've been back and forth, but one of the top teams in the nation. So we didn't win a national championship while I was there, but we did win the Rose Bowl championship. I think we won once or twice, and quite a few other New Year's Day bowls. Had lots of, obviously, USC always had lots of NFL players, so lots of my teammates that made it. I wasn't a superstar in that sense in terms of NFL or anything like that, but I did get a chance to play briefly with the New York Giants, and basically just in the preseason. Had lots of injuries and things that I was overcoming. But out of all the teams I could have got a chance to go to, you're 22 years old, you're just trying to play and have a great time. But I ended up going to a team with multiple Hall of Famers. At the time, the New York Giants I was a linebacker as well. I was an inside linebacker, but we had some great players, Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, Coach Bill Parcells. Coach Bill Belichick was actually my linebacker coach and our defensive coordinator. And then there was some phenomenal players on offense as well. So in my short experience there, it was kind of a unique privilege and really exciting time. And then also I was always a big weightlifter in terms of my body weight wasn't big, but I was just always extremely strong naturally. And so in college, I was a member of the All-American Strength Team, where they take the top 22 players who are also the tops in the nation in their strength. And so I was bench pressing over 500 and something pounds. And I don't know, at the time they did leg press about 1,800. And I had some knee surgeries that kind of hindered some things later. But anyway,
hold on a second. I just want to make sure. Hold on. I just want to make sure the audio didn't cut out for our guests. And they may have thought I was talking about what I bench press and leg press. So this was Keith. If you're not watching on video, that was Keith talking. So that was in high school or college, you were bench pressing over 500 pounds?
Yeah, college. Yeah. 515. And then, so again, we had they don't really do like now, as you know, lifting is very different as the eras have gone on, just like hitting, you don't hit with the head anymore and all these different things. But that being said, yeah, so we did a lot of squats, a lot of leg press, a lot of bench press. It was more powerlifting, where now it's a lot more movement and explosive movements. And as we see training as it's evolved, but then I just laugh because some of the young guys say, man, you guys did the old school lifting, but it was very good for your game. Strength is strength and speed is speed, as we know. But I've always loved weightlifting because I think it was just a thing that was naturally given to me, where some guys have phenomenal hand-eye coordination or phenomenal speed or agility. I mean, you have to have all those, but I think, strength was a thing that was really a grace that God gave me. And it was very, I think, it was a big deal in that era because in that era, there were a lot of players that were using steroids. So I was a natural athlete, but I always got called when they were doing the random steroid test. My name was always on the list, So anyway, that being said, it was, you look back and you're always thankful for just whatever gifts you had and using them to the maximum ability.
So you and I met in Detroit, and again, just to reiterate, you were leg pressing 1,800 pounds. So I'm going to be very careful what I say and how I say it. Thank goodness it's over video. But I can leg press 1,800 pounds. It just takes me 18 reps, and I total 1,800 pounds. That's how I get there. So that was a per rep total that you're on. I get it. But you shared with me some of your personal story just in high school. So I think some of that helped with your leg press, but if you could tell us kind of that journey of changing high schools, and I think it's just an incredible and inspirational story.
Sure, and that's my goal, just to always inspire anyone who may be going through challenges, that we don't, don't quit, don't give up. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. I have a theme that there's always a second half to our first half. And so long story, I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. And it's always been a very rough city, at least that part of LA. And my father was a good guy who kind of got off the wrong track. I think trying to make some fast money. He's got involved with selling drugs and that whole thing. My father ended up committing suicide when I was 4 years old. Then my mom was left all by herself in South Central LA. And the pressures of life just began to take toll on her. And my mom began to drink, and drink had become alcoholic in her own words as well. I remember her, coming, just passing out and all these different things. And so that led to just a very unstable childhood. We would just move from one place to the next. Because I remember, I never forget just coming home from school, and she just giving me a trash bag. Here, throw your stuff in this bag because we got to move. And you just picking up everything you own, and then within a few hours, you're just gone, And then we'd move to another, I don't say raggedy place, just another rough neighborhood. And then here I am in another school, and then we'd move to another place. And so I tried to total up all the schools that I was in, because I'm trying to remember, in elementary, it was so many, but I think it totaled, at least from the ones I can remember, about 19 different schools before I was 15 years old. And in Los Angeles, you had to go to the school in your community. So by the time I got to high school, I was set to go to Los Angeles High School. And Los Angeles High School was a very rough school. And LA has lots of gangs. As you know, you got Bloods, you got Crips, you got East Side, you got West Side, you got all these different things. And I literally just got caught up in a shootout the day before. And I remember being home that night wondering why do I live here? Why am I in this family? Why do I have to go through this? Because the neighborhood I lived in, it was a whole bunch of apartment buildings. And at this time, the crack epidemic was rampant. So it was just, 30, 40 dudes up and down the street selling crack. And so I said to myself, I don't want to go to this school, because I wanted to play football. And those who have a dream, don't let go of the dream. I wanted to play. So I got up one morning and I just caught the bus all the way to Beverly Hills. And I got off the bus in Beverly Hills and went to Beverly Hills High School and said I needed to enroll in school. I told them I lived in Beverly Hills. And obviously, I wrote down an address of some really nice house, and I told them that's where I lived. They wouldn't let me enroll. And I just walked back to the bus stop. I didn't go home, and I just kept trying to get into another school further west. And anyone who knows the map of LA, the further west you go, you end up at the beach. And the only thing you can do from that point is get on a boat and go to Hawaii or Japan or something. So I was at the last stop, and there was one high school about a block and a half from the beach. It was Santa Monica High School. And I remember I had a friend from Little League who lived in that area. And I called him and asked him to ask his mama if I could use her electricity bill. And so she gave me the electricity bill. I went and enrolled myself into that school, and the rest was history. That school had lots of players get scholarships to USC, UCLA, Oregon, everything. But it was also a life-changing moment because it finally got me out of my neighborhood. It was about an hour ride on the bus every morning. This is the city bus. So I was leaving house at 6 a.m. instead of 8 in the morning, where all the dudes were smoking the weed, drinking, hanging out. And then I would get home at 8:30 at night after practice. And so I wasn't hanging out on the streets. And a lot of the gentlemen in my neighborhood ended up in prison. Some ended up dead, all of these things. So I think God had a divine plan in terms of really helping me through that. And I ended up getting a scholarship, lots of different opportunities, but I ended up getting a scholarship, to USC. And that's a whole nother story academically, because I was I was a remedial student. I had struggled with some things, and ended up going from a remedial student entering college to graduating with the highest GPA from the business school. You were on my team, highest GPA, Dean's List, academic All-American, Scholar Award of Honor, and lots of other honors. So it's been an incredible journey in a nutshell, to say that no matter what's happened in our first half, we can always have a great second half. And it's a great encouragement to those out there.
No, I mean, that is just a story of inspiration, right? It's pursuing your dream. You're never giving up. And I tell people that your dreams are only over when you quit dreaming, right? If it's not good, then God's not finished, is what I tell people. And as long as you have that mindset, then God may be withholding you from the opportunity to help you build the strength to maintain the capacity, or have the capacity it takes to withhold the dream. So the longer it takes, the bigger the dream can be. So just encouraging our listeners out there, and sure, you may not be in a situation similar to Keith. I mean, obviously that's a very dramatic situation, and you fought hard and God protected you in a way and helped you arrive at where you are today. But all of our situations are real to us. And so whatever you're going through, never give up, keep the dreams alive, and just keep pursuing them. And eventually the doors that you're knocking on will open. And I thought I remember you telling me you were riding your bike like an absurd amount of distance as well. Was that just a one-time thing, or is
No, so yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. And then it's funny you mentioned that because, we got on this thing about leg pressing 1,800 pounds. So long story, to ride a city bus, it costs money. And when you grew up in certain scenarios, some kids have it, like my kids, they got it great. They never really had to ride the bus. Mom takes you to practice, picks you up, all these things. So a lot of things I had to do. I became very, very independent at a young age. I remember being like first grade, 6, 7 years old, carry all my clothes to the laundromat, wash my clothes, bring them back home, coming home, trying to cook me some food, 7-year-old, 8-year-old. But anyway, back to the bike. So sometimes I didn't have money for the bus. And I was so hungry. And this is for those who are out there who are hungry and thirsty for your dream or for whatever it is you want to do. I was so hungry that I would, and that we had football practice or we had training. So I would ride my bike from the middle of LA all the way out to the beach. It was like an hour, I don't know, hour and a half ride, whatever it was. And then there were some hills. And so you imagine doing this, like, my legs were like, it is unbelievable, because it was a common thing that I would do. I just ride my bike all the way and then ride all the way back after you did lifting, training, practice. And but I was hungry and I was very thirsty to have just a chance and an opportunity. And it's funny too, because I look back now being young, but just understanding, like, not missing opportunity, because it could have been where you just said, well, I can't go to practice today. We don't have any money. But I think sometimes when you're very much when you're very much, I don't want to say desperate, but you're hungry enough to do. I heard a man say it like this: when you're willing to do what other people won't do today, you will have some things tomorrow other people don't have. So even when I'm speaking in schools, sometimes I'll with the kids, I'll bring them up, and I have these big giant golden diamond Rose Bowl championship rings, and I put up the rings on them. I put the jersey, they're high, they're like bling bling, but we talk about just the willingness to do what other people won't do, which is sit in front of class or pay attention when everybody's smoking and drinking and hanging. You're willing to do what others won't do so you can have some things tomorrow, like the college degree or the opportunities that you're looking for. So yeah, I would ride the bike forever just to get to where I wanted to get. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity.
So we're talking like 25 or 30 miles, right? Each
Oh
way.
yeah,
Yeah,
easy. Yeah.
easily. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my my kids won't listen to my podcast anymore because they know I get someone like you on and I'm coming home and that Xbox is going to get smashed on the ground. And I don't care how cold it is. We're going to go out and swim in the lake. Your life's too easy. And you don't. So, and it lasts every couple of days. Like, oh, Dad, who'd you have on your podcast today? And
Yeah,
I'm like, well,
yeah,
I'm going to tell you, this guy rode his bike 30 miles each way to practice. So,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
did his own laundry. So go help mom do the laundry. So they're going to get it today. I'm telling you. So,
Yeah.
but in all seriousness, I want to thank you for coming on. It's a great story, but we haven't even gotten to what the good part is, and so we'll touch on your football career a little bit. It's really though what impresses me about you is what you've been able to do after football,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you see a lot of athletes. And what we're doing at the House of Bricks Business Advisory Services, we work with entrepreneurs, CEOs, but also professional athletes, because it's very tough for them to make that transition from being an athlete to actually surviving in post sports, because no matter how good you are as an athlete, you have a limited shelf life. And how do you translate that into the business world post career? So tell us a little bit about your time at USC. We can touch on your NFL career, and then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Sure. So at USC, I was a business finance major, and that's a whole nother story. As I mentioned, like I came in a remedial student, but I just had a dream. I would remember I would pray and say, God, please don't let me be another black player that doesn't graduate, because the graduation rate was so low among players in general, black, white, Hispanic, or whatever. But among black athletes, it was even lower. And they kind of steered me away from that major because it was going to be too difficult for me, especially for a young guy who didn't have any SAT scores or anything like that. So I would just sit in front of the tutor or the reading specialist just to help me through. And I had no social life whatsoever at that time because I was just very hungry to make it. But all that to say, after graduating from the business school, and then like I said, I signed with the Giants and was there just briefly. And then when I left the New York Giants, I ended up going. I was in the finance realm working for just a bit, and an opportunity came, and it was an opportunity to work with a group of athletes that were speaking across the nation. And it's funny because there was a pro athletes conference that I would go to, a pro and college athletes conference, and the gentleman who put this conference on, it was one of the largest conferences in the nation. So all the top NFL pros from the day, Barry Sanders, Reggie White, all these guys would be there, plus all the college players. And I would every now and then, maybe a little nugget, 2 minutes here or 3 minutes there, I would speak. So the guy had referred me to this group, and I had been doing some speaking even when I was at USC, just trying to help my community, because again, I was born and raised in that area. USC was actually closer to my house than my high school was. And every Saturday or multiple Saturdays, I would go to the juvenile detention center and speak to the young boys that were incarcerated there. And then I would go on Wednesday nights to the homeless shelter downtown to Skid Row, and it'd be 600-700 homeless people in there. They had to listen to a speaker before they got some food. And it smelled like you could imagine. I mean, you've seen Skid Row in LA, and I'd just be speaking, sweating, preaching away, sharing. I had my USC jersey. They were into it. They like USC. And that leads this. I'm going about this to share just kind of the business opportunity that came, and then I'll go visit some schools. So I started working. I started working in the finance realm, but I always made time to speak and just encourage people. But I felt this emptiness though, and I know people. We talk about emptiness for God, but I also felt an emptiness in my purpose, because at one point I was working so much that I wasn't getting a chance to go to the juvenile center or to the shelter or do things with my church. And I said, I have to stay involved. I have to keep giving. And so all of a sudden, this opportunity came with this group of athletes, and I began to travel and speak at different schools with them. And that led to a whole nother opportunity in the realm of speaking, corporate speaking, business speaking, and ministry speaking. And so that's pretty much what I've been doing now for the last 30 years or so. And I can elaborate a little bit more on that as we go. So.
I got to ask you, okay, so our environment as kids, as we grow up, has a huge impact on who we are. And I listen to where you started and where you are today. I'm absolutely blown away. And so how did you where did this desire, obviously you just fell in love with the game of football, but there's a lot of people that love things, but they don't really love them enough to pursue them. And they find reasons in their situation to just give up. Where did this motivation come from? Where did this integrity and character come from? I know the second I met you, I was like, this is a guy I want to know, I want to be connected with. I mean, you just have that character and integrity, and you don't have to say a lot. And it's just in your presence. And so where did this come from?
Yeah, so let me just kind of share, I think maybe the inception of it. So, because I want to give my mom a little bit of honor as well. I talked a little bit about just the whole alcohol, and I didn't get into just the abusive relationships that were. I get, we have an adult audience, so I can mention more things than I do when I'm with young people. But, my mom went from one relationship to another, and her boyfriend was just, after my father passed, just brutally abusive. I mean, brutal domestic violence. And so I'm experiencing this in my life. How can you're a kid. You're trying to deal with this, and this man's not only beating your mom, but he's hitting you. So you're going through all these things. So I have to do that to tell the full swing of the story. So later, my mom goes to a funeral. And at this funeral, I think one of my cousins had passed away. He was a young guy. One of my cousin's husbands, excuse me. So my cousin had been married. Her husband passed away. The gentleman who was sharing at the funeral, he didn't just do the funeral, but he talked about having a new life, a new joy, a new hope, a new relationship with God if you don't have one. And my mom came forward at that funeral, and a few of her other sisters as well. And my mother's life, I know people have had religious experiences, but this was not a religious experience. This was a transformation. They say there's a difference between religion and a relationship, between believing in God and belonging to God. And I think my mom just had a connection, a divine connection, because there was no 12-step program that stopped the alcoholism. It was just like an infusion of peace that happened on her life and hope and stuff. And so I think my mom really began to pray for me, because I was really caught up in the streets, just hanging out. I was a teenager at the time. And so, again, to answer the question, where did this desire, this character, this hope, this motivation come from? And so I ended up eventually coming to that same connection point, having that same faith where God just transformed me. I just had a relationship with Christ that totally changed me. But I was young, and it wasn't like somebody made me go. It wasn't like, your mom, you got to go to church or get up, or it wasn't anything like that. It was just a weird experience when I look back on when I see young people now, because it's kind of like, where my parents want me to go, or everybody in the youth group is doing it. It wasn't anything. It was like so personal for me. And so that's why even when I was at USC in college, a lot of dudes on my team, they laugh, because I'm still like the same way to this day. I was just on a whole nother level, because I was like, God, I don't need Bible stories for yesterday. I need something that's going to help me today in this class and tomorrow, and all these, you got all these beautiful women around, you got all these parties, you got all this, you got that. And it wasn't like just trying to stay away from things, but I was so busy wanting to do what I felt like God had me to do. And I think, the greatest motivation, they say the greatest leadership is internal leadership instead of external. And when you can lead yourself, then you can lead other things. The greatest joy is internal joy. So that's really all where it came from, is just in that real relationship with Christ. And then I had a phenomenal chaplain who used to really just keep us on track, fired up, and gave us some great reading material. I couldn't read well at the time, little bitty books, but they would just inspire me. And I just felt like that it was a real experience that stirred up the gift that's in me. It fanned it in the flame. And so that's where it came from, and it's still there today. So I'm so thankful for it.
Well, one of the things that I talk about on the House of Bricks, and I shared a little bit of my story with you in Detroit. I don't know if you remember it or not, but anyway, we get on here and we talk about our upbringing, and it's never intended to paint our parents in a bad way or talk about them or cast judgment or whatever it is, because I'm a parent today, and I mess up as a dad every day. I mess up as a husband. I mess up in my business. And at any time people are sharing that story, I'm like, you know what? If they have bitterness or judgment towards their parents, I tell them, pick up your phone and call them. Because until you're a parent, you never understand what it's like to be a parent. And nothing can draw the worst and the best out of you like marriage and your kids. So it's really not about them. It's a mirror. It's a reflection of who you are and how in the areas you need to grow in. So marriage is a mirror. It's a reflection of who you are, and it draws those things, both good and things that we call areas of improvement that you need to work on. My wife will sometimes use other words that I won't say on the podcast. I'm just kidding, Vanessa. You're amazing. It's all my fault is one thing I've learned in the last 20 years of marriage. So my point is, if your parents are alive and you have issues with them, fix them, because you never know how long they're going to be here. And drinking or bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And it just doesn't happen. It's going to kill you. And so that unforgiveness and bitterness is really just eating you alive. So if you have the opportunity, reconcile that. And all of that was to say that every parent wants the best for their kids. There's just things and situations that causes them to act and behave differently. So I appreciate your transparency on that and just your openness. And I do want to congratulate you on one other thing, which is you have a college degree and I do not. I dropped out of college after my freshman year, and somehow I ended up where I am today, but I didn't give up on my dreams either. And I'm still dreaming. I want to change the world through my podcast and my business coaching and advisory services to get people to enjoy the journey. And now we're going to talk about
They couldn't
what's
teach
that.
you everything you learn anyway. You are a sharp. When I met you, you're a sharp guy. So I think the university professors would not have been able to teach you all that you could receive anyway. So God had a better plan to let you really maximize your intelligence. So
Well,
yeah.
I'll receive that. And maybe that's why I got a D on my exam and walked out. So I should have got an A. I didn't listen to anything the professor said. I just did what I wanted to do, and he gave me a D. And so I said, this place is not for me. I'll see you later. So let's talk about what you're up to now. What's going
Okay.
on? I know you're changing lives
Yeah.
in ways other than football.
Yeah. So I always have a prayer. God, use me, help me, use me to change the world. And wherever our world is, it's it's a lot of opportunity there. So I've been speaking. So long story short, in a nutshell, I developed a program to inspire students, high school, middle school, even elementary, actually, and then college students as well. And so I've been speaking in schools for more than 30 years, inspiring them educationally, their choices, The whole issues with dangers of drugs and alcohol, the character, and their faith in places that allow me to share it. I've traveled to more than 64 countries, and next month will be 65 countries because we're doing a whole week of speaking in schools in Uganda. And for that, to just clarify that, so when I'm in the US, we have these character topics, but across the globe in other countries, it's character plus all of your faith and everything else you want to share with it because they're hungry. And in those countries as well, I just finished a project where a lot of people don't know, in the US or in most first world countries, education is free, all kind of opportunities, whereas in third world countries, even kids to even have a desk to sit in, you have to buy your own desk. You have to pay fees. You have to buy your own uniform. So me and some other teammates, friends, we've got together to furnish schools with brand new desks. It's amazing to see kids going crazy over a new desk. Like it's like, they were getting delivered by the truck and they all running out and like they wouldn't even wait till they were in the classroom just to sit in it because you've seen kids on the floor just writing. So we just did a whole, literally this past week, new desk, new school uniforms because they're just tattered. My wife and I sponsored, helped build some, not completely build a school, but finish the bathrooms because how can you have a school of 400 kids and no bathroom? So these are some of the things internationally that we're involved in as well. But all of it is around education. And also in the U.S., I'm doing a lot of teacher staff development because we want to inspire our teachers because our teachers are with our students every day. And then I am also developing a lot of my corporate speaking. I've spent about 80% of my time in the educational realm, but then also some of our corporate speaking to just speak to those who either own companies or are working in the corporate world, which is just about resilience and change. I think resilience is it's a force that allows us to mold and shape our lives in the middle of the constructs con- the construction of everything that's happening, and we're trying to construct our families, we're trying to construct our business, we're trying to get our bottom line and change. And so how do we do that? So anyway, it's been a great journey. I have been in, I don't know how many thousands, 20,000, 30,000 schools maybe across the globe, from Australia to Japan, India, from one end of Africa all the way north, from Egypt to Nigeria, all the way down to South Africa, all through Europe. Lots of schools in England and Scotland, even in Russia, believe it or not, Ukraine as well. And I found that young people are young people, and they all are hungry for encouragement and inspiration. And so those of us who have children, I think it's important to speak life and hope to them. And those students who are in school who don't have parents that or someone in their life that can speak that, I think sometime when we come, we can add a little bit of that. And it's been an incredible open door that I'm so thankful for. So I've been up to that. I'm literally every day. From Monday to Friday in some school. And then I have a whole team of players that speak with me as well. Guys that have played. I just got off the phone with one. He played with the Indianapolis Colts. Guys played with the Cleveland Browns, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some of these are just teammates or gentlemen that I've met who have not just a gift to speak, but a heart. Because when you speak to a young person, they're like X-ray vision. They'll hear you, but they're really looking to see what you're really about. Because I'm not hearing you until I can feel you, right? And so they don't really hear what you say, they feel what you say. And so I think that's maybe, I want to say successfully, maybe that has brought the success in the effectiveness of my speaking, because I contract with lots of school districts around the nation. But there's always a change that happens when we come. And I think the change comes from the passion and the love that's coming out of our heart. Even though words are coming that are bringing help and instruction, but there's something that they're connecting with, because, we just did a big thing in Houston 3 days ago about the suicide issue. And we have kids who coming telling us they were thinking about suicide, but not anymore. You gave me hope. My life is worth living. Students who pulled their sleeves up and showed me their cuts in their arm. And one girl showed me all these cuts in her leg. They didn't like themselves, but I'm like, you're unique. You're one of a kind. You're valuable. You can't give up on you. So it's been a great, 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 exciting journey, and it's not over yet. You know, it's still a lot to do, a lot going on, and I'm dreaming more and more, and the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So
Absolutely. And I'm just writing some things down that I'm taking away from my kids when I get home. No more
okay,
desks, no more bathroom. So we're just kind of going down the list. So this is going to be a podcast for the ages. So I wish I would have seen you before Christmas, but they probably paid you off to delay the
uh,
podcast. But you mentioned you're going to Uganda. So we
yes,
had a guest on our show, Kasumba Dennis. I don't know if you've seen him
no.
on Instagram, but he's the baseball player trying to make it to the major league. So if you haven't seen him, you got to look him up, or I'll text you
Oh
his
yes,
profile.
yes,
But
yeah.
he's gone crazy on social media. He's out there training with bricks and bottles of water and making like makeshift bench press. He 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 gets inside of like a barrel that's got water in it, and he's like running. So it's pretty interesting, but it's amazing what work ethic that not having enough will create in a person. So it's such a balance as a parent. You want to reward your kids with good gifts, and you worked hard to provide them a better life. But here at the House of Bricks, we talk about life's experiences like bricks. You can either use them for you to build a strong foundation, or you can carry all of these bad experiences with you and they weigh you down and steal your dreams. So you talked about constructing your future, right? So every experience can help construct your future. And a lot of what you talked about, to most people, those are not great experiences that you want to go through, but you, combined with God's plan for your life, helped you use those to build that strong foundation. And it's given you a platform to now inspire thousands of people in 65 countries. A kid from Los Angeles riding his bike 40 miles each way to practice. It sounds made up, but I know it's not, because I've seen how big your quads are. So if anyone's doubting this, okay, this guy's quads are as big as I am. And so there's no doubt he was leg pressing 1,800 pounds, but it's amazing. This is exactly what the House of Bricks is all about, is using whatever experience to build your foundation, then ultimately live out the vision and dream that God has for you and that you have for yourself. So
There's a word picture that I share quite a bit when I speak. So there was a game at USC. We were getting ready to play the number one team in the nation. And we were having an up and down year. I think we had about 3 losses already. Every ESPN expert had predicted we were going to lose. But if we could win the Pac-10 title. We're going to go to the Rose Bowl, all these things. But long story short, this game, we in the locker room, we're clicking it up, click, click, gloves, wrist tape, muscles bulging. We're walking down the tunnel of the Coliseum, and we get to the edge, and, it's 90,000. It's shaking to the rafters. The cameras in our face. We run out on this field, and, they come out, and they calling cadence, 28, blue, what? This ball snaps, and we come with everything we got. And my man just drops back, and he just fires away on us. And up and down the field they go. By the end of the first half, we got 0. It's so embarrassing. Not only are they running us out of the stadium, but out of our own house. And so we run in at halftime, and the crowd literally boos us. Because not only are we losing, but we're losing bad, and we're playing terrible. But we get it at halftime, and coach just said, we're going to get a new game plan for the second half. We worked 7 days on this one plan, or 6.5 days, whatever. And they start changing things in 7 to 8 minutes. They changing a whole bunch of stuff. And you know how it goes in the locker room. And we come back out with a whole new scheme. We start coming back. And I mean, it's erupting. The stadium is going crazy, but we're still 3 points down, and we need a miracle. Our QB just drops back and throws a bomb. and all the way down the edge of the sideline, my boy Eric, 1 inch from the corner of the end zone, 1 inch from the other corner, dudes all over him, and he just reaches and he just boom, and he bobbles it, and he gets hit and he flips. So the stadium erupts because they don't know, did he catch it? Did he not? Was he in? Was he out? And you're just waiting. And the man with the striped shirt just puts both hands up. Gosh, everybody erupts. And I share the story simply as a metaphor because we didn't win the game in the first half. We won it in the second half. And many of us have had some bad first halves. Even if we grew up wealthy with everything, because I meet lots of kids and I speak in schools in really good neighborhoods as well as bad. They've had bad first halves emotionally, or maybe my father's so busy with his business, no time with me, or maybe we've been through bullying, or maybe the kid is depressed. They have everything to live on, but little to live for. They have money, but no meaning, right? Or somebody like myself who just had a bad situation, but you were born into that. And so many of us had bad first halves, but I always say, but no matter what's happened in the first half, God has allowed this day to let us know, and you stay encouraged that we can all have a great second half. New game plan. There's a comeback. And the thing about the second half is that the second half is really interesting because when we're coming down the tunnel for the second half, you're still a little bit depressed because you got 0. But when you look at the scoreboard, the score shows you 0, and maybe you feel like your life is 0. I've done all these things wrong. Okay, but the greatest part about the clock, the scoreboard, the jumbotron, is that in gigantic numbers, bigger than the score is the clock, and the clock resets at halftime, which means there's still time. It's not over yet. We're still here. There's still an opportunity. There's still hope. Right, it's still a dream. So this is my story. This is my life. This is the USC. This is yours. This is many of our stories, and whether it was the first marriage or our first business or whatever it may be, right? And even with our children. So we want a great second half, and even in giving people hope, whether it's at the homeless shelter, or whether it's at a school, or whether it's at the nursing home, or whether it's just my colleague at work or at my church, to let people know that there is a second half because the Lord rose again and we have this day to rise again. Time's not up. So that's my picture. And I love what you guys are doing. And I love to just, in whatever way we can connect with people to let them feel better when they leave the podcast than when they started. To have more dreams that may have been on the shelf and they have to dust off. They can get them off. And like the great Dr. Edwin Lewis Cole, he was one of the most influential authors I'd ever read about. As a 19-year-old, he had a saying, winners always look at what they're going to, and losers always look at what they're going through. He had wrote a book called Maximize Manhood and just challenged us to keep our eyes, our vision, our hope before us. So anyway, I think that's just a word of encouragement for the listeners there.
Well, you mentioned hope, and there was also a saying that said, hope deferred makes the heart sick, right? And that is the thing that as long as you have hope, you will find a way, but you have to have hope. And so if this podcast was just for you and I to get on and have some laughs and tell some real stories, but there's one listener out there that is either reconciling the relationship with their parents, right? Unforgiveness, bitterness, or hearing your story or my story is giving them hope, just that one person, then all of this was worth every moment of what we're doing today. And the last thing I want to talk to you about as we wrap up is you mentioned just what your coaches were able to do in that game at USC. How important is coaching and mentorship and having an advisor? How important is that to you in life and just what you've seen?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because there's a verse that says, with good advice or good counsel make war. So I think it's very important because I think it's an impartation of wisdom and encouragement. So, obviously there's different types of coaching in our lives. We have professional coaching and whatever the career or that it may be that you're pursuing. But then obviously, my wife is one, is she does a lot. She's a wellness professional, so she does wellness coaching, but then there's also life coaching. And I think more people are in need of life coaching than anything, because I think if we can keep our life and our heart and our mind at peace and going in the right direction, then we begin to prosper in everything else that we do. And so I think it's very important. And especially if I find somebody who has wisdom that I can basically eat off of. And what I mean by eat off, it's like a tree that has all kind of fruit. And your life has fruit, Adam, and you've been very successful in business at a very young age, very successful in some things. So the fruit is there, and it's for people to eat off of that desire it, right? And so even with the young people, there were some things that have come through that have helped me make it through. So that fruit is coming out of my tree, and then they can eat of that as well. So I think the thing is to, in coaching, to find someone that is, I like to say, in Philippians 4:13, it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But an amplified version says, I can do all things through Christ who infuses me with strength in my inner being, right? And so I think that's what a coach does. It infuses us with strength in our inner being, infuses us with direction, with hope, and like my coaches did in the locker room, and then help you get a game plan so that we can go out and really do this thing. Because it was in us, right? But it had to be guided. And once he redirected the plan, then we came out and did what we had to do for the second half. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. Coaches or advisors or mentors, they've gone through probably what it is that you're going through, and they're able to see what's happening on the field. It's a different view, right? When you're not on the field, you can see what's going on. So there's a difference between working in your business and on your business, and someone with an objective view can help see things, blind spots, whatever. If it's a life coach, business coach, financial coach, they can see things that we're often blind to in our own weaknesses. There's so many blind spots. And so that outside perspective can really give you clarity. And so as we wrap up today, first of all, I want to, again, thank you for being on the show. I've only known you for a couple months, but I feel like we'll be lifelong friends. I really believe in what you're doing. And we're going to share in our show notes how people can get connected with you, perhaps support what it is that you're doing. This guy is literally changing the world, going to 65 countries. And these aren't easy places to go to. It's not like he's staying at the Four Seasons in Uganda. I mean, he's out there, putting in some real work, going into these schools. I mean, this next generation, a lot of people are afraid of what's going to happen to our country. I see it as a great opportunity because tough times create great people, and it takes people like Keith that are willing to go and do the difficult things to really help change and impact a generation. So Keith, I want to thank you for being a guest on the House of Bricks podcast, and we'll definitely stay connected. I know all of our listeners are going to benefit from spending time with you. So thank you again for being on the House of Bricks.
It's been great, and more than a privilege. And again, the night we met at the business function was just phenomenal. So I'm so glad that we got a chance to connect, just that we could even have this moment to encourage whoever's listening. So thank you all for taking the time to listen, and thank you, Adam, for just working this vision that you have to make a vehicle so that people can listen and gain some insight, so that we can all work together on making literally the world a better place. Maybe just start with our own little world, but our little world expands more and more and more, and together we can all win. So thank you, man. I appreciate you.
And for those of you that want to learn more about Keith Davis and perhaps get involved, because it does require an investment. No, he's not asking you for money. I'm telling you, sow good seeds and they will come back to you. So go to www.keithdavis.org. Again, that's keithdavis.org. You can learn more about the impact that he's making and hopefully get involved.
All right. God bless.